It got into the whole, we have to destroy the family structure. We have to come up with a new way of, thinking about how we approach these things. And it was pretty much the BLM mantra, the whole idea of um, deconstructing the traditional family structure. That was what it came down to. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? I never learned my lesson. You never argue with strangers online. That's the lesson here. Don't spend your time arguing with strangers online. It's pointless. Oh yeah, I was on Clubhouse recently. Usually, when I'm on Clubhouse these days, I just go there to listen. I'm only there for the gospels for the most part. I'm not there to engage. But there was this one time, like this past week, that they were having this discussion about, I think it had to do with families and relationships. And I have a family, I'm in a relationship, so I was like, okay, actually maybe this isn't something that I can contribute to. So I hopped on stage. They were arguing about, the argument was about needing your mate, needing your partner, or needing somebody in life, needing a life partner. And it wasn't really clear whether it was within a marriage context or within a relationship context. But the main point was that you had these feminists that were arguing with these non-feminists, I would say. And the feminists were arguing that, no one should need anyone. This whole idea of needing someone, it's archaic, like the usual argument. And there was just something about it that I found weird, because it's like, what do you mean no one should need anyone? Like, we're all humans, right? I mean, we're communal beings for a reason. So I hopped on and I was trying to explain that, look, if you're in a relationship, that's one thing. But if you are trying to get into something serious that leads into marriage and you want to like start a family, this idea of not needing someone it's kind of weird, because we all need people, like I need my family members. I need my brothers. I need my sister. I need my mom. Now, they were saying, well, this idea of needing someone, if that person, something happens to that person and they die, then, it's like you already cultivated a life around them and it's not really healthy. I'm like, that's kind of a weird way to look at it. Like, what do you mean by, like, obviously, if someone in my life died, obviously I would still be able to move on, but that doesn't mean I still don't want them in my life while they're around, Anyway, the point I was just trying to make was that, look, we're communal beings. We need people in our lives. We need friends. We need, we need to be able to interact. If you had everything, let's say a genie showed up and you had everything you wanted in life, you had access to everything, all the riches, and the only caveat was that you couldn't be around people. That was the only caveat for the rest of your life. You couldn't be around, you couldn't talk to anybody, and you couldn't be around people. You could see them on TV, wherever, but you could never be around them. You would lose your mind. So, of course, we need people. And who better to need than someone that you've chosen to spend the rest of your life with? The point I was trying to make was that I get it. You don't want to be too codependent on someone. But if you're going to enter into a marriage, into a relationship, the best way it really can work, at least this is my opinion, the best way it can work is that there has to be some level of codependency. This idea of independence, and you guys are just, they kept talking about partnerships. We're just in a partnership, and, I'm doing my own thing, you're doing your own thing, and we're not having to, fully depend on each other for each other's needs. And I'm like, what's the point of getting into a marriage? Like, what's the point? Why even get into a marriage? Why sign a contract for the rest of your life? what's the point? Anyway, it was just this back and forth. And then before you know it, it turned into the whole patriarchy thing. We have to destroy the patriarchy. And it got even darker. It got into the whole, we have to destroy the family structure. We have to come up with a new way of, thinking about how we approach these things. And it was pretty much the BLM mantra, the whole idea of deconstructing the traditional family structure. That was what it came down to. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? I never learned my lesson. You never argue with strangers online. That's the lesson here. Don't spend your time arguing with strangers online. It's pointless. I mean, these people I wouldn't even call them feminists, because I think everyone should be a feminist. I think most people these days are feminists. Feminism is believing in the equality of women, equal access, equal rights. I think most people are on the same page with that. I do think the feminist movement has kind of moved into another realm these days, and it's no longer just about equal rights. It's more about, at least with some of them, I don't want to paint everyone with a broad brush, but it's become more about destroying the patriarchy. And once the argument got to that point, then, obviously you had some of these girls or some of these women started, getting really spicy, really throwing insults. And I'm like, I don't even know why am I on here? So I hopped off the stage. I'm like, look, I'm not here for the gbasgbos. I'm usually just here to listen to the gbasgbos, not to participate in it. So I hopped off the stage and I learned my lesson, that, never argue with people online. But, this radical feminism movement that's going on these days, man, it's just something about it that's it's just weird, man. It's like, I know you have men in your life, and you can't tell me that all the men in your life are people that you hate. You can't tell me that you want to destroy all of them, or you want to, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I get it that, over time, there may have been things within the patriarchy that may have favored men over women. But then you could also say the same for how some other things favored women over men within this patriarchal system that we have. It's never so black and white. And I just think people don't really have perspective. Like, they don't really have the full perspective on how far we've come and how much we've been able to accomplish, over the centuries, how we've been able to kind of tame society. And I'm not saying things are perfect. I'm not saying there aren't still areas of the world where things aren't still very, very backward for women. Even in the West, I'm sure there are areas of improvement. There's always room for improvement. But this idea that we're going to deconstruct or we're going to scrap something, it's like, okay, you scrap it, then what do you replace it with? And then, when you ask them this question, they say stuff like, we just want to be able to reimagine, where we're not really putting anyone in a box. And it's this like free thinking, free thought where everyone just gets to kind of do whatever they want to do. And I'm like, look, you can do that. In the West, you have the choice to do that. But this idea that you want to get everyone on board, I think you have a long way to go. Like, not everyone is convinced. And this family structure that we have, this patriarchal structure that we have, it is working for some. Now, they would argue that, it is oppressing others. But that's when the debate gets a little dicey, because I don't think it's that simple. I really just don't think so, especially when you look at the stats, when you look at the amount of men that die every year. I mean, if we're talking about oppression, there's nothing that's more oppressive than death.
In what sense is our society male-dominated?
The fact that the vast majority of wealth is owned by men, the vast majority of capital is owned by men. Women do more unpaid labor.
Very tiny proportion of men, and a huge proportion of people who are seriously disaffected are men. Most people in prison are men. Most people who are on the street are men. Most victims of violent crime are men. Most people who commit suicide are men. Most people who die in wars are men. People who do worse in school are men. It's like, where's the dominance here precisely? What you're doing is you're taking a tiny substrata of hyper successful men and using that to represent the entire structure of Western society. There's nothing about that that's vaguely.
You know what I'm saying? There's nothing more oppressive than death, and men die at a far higher rate. That is a fact. But the truth of the matter is that we as a society, and when I talk about the patriarchy, I'm not talking about just men. This is in conjunction with women too. We have found a way to kind of tame society so that we're not at our most savage, which we used to be at one point. And people don't understand that, and it's hard to really get people to understand that. If you like this content, feel free to hit the like, hit the subscribe button.